I'm Jamie Adrian, and joining me today is Darryl Seipp. It's November 7th, 2011. Thank you, Darryl, for being with us today and sharing your memories.
You're welcome.
I'd like to just start off with some basic questions. Can you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in Westminster, here in Carroll County, in 1941, 1st of September.
Good. And did you spend your entire life here growing up?
Yes, I did.
Did you go to all your schools here?
Yes, I did.
Where did you go to school?
Up on Pennsylvania Avenue. I went to West End. I started my first, second, and third grade. West End School.
And who were your parents?
Mr. and Mrs. Charles L. Seipp.
And what did your parents do? Was your mother a homemaker, or did she work outside of home?
Mother was a homemaker, and Dad was worked in the police force for Westminster.
You had said earlier to me off camera that he was the chief of police. Was that interesting, having the chief of police as your father growing up?
It was. Growing up as a child, you couldn't be bad or anything. He'd bring that up to you. He'd say, "What will people think?" So I had to be a perfect little kid.
And you said earlier to me that you have some siblings. How many siblings do you have?
I have one sister and 4 brothers.
Wow, that's a big family. How was that like growing up with such a big family?
Sometimes it was hectic. Everybody sitting around the table, and it was interesting. In the evening, you sit down and talk about the day's happenings. Nowadays, people doesn't do that.
So can you tell me some interesting things about Westminster in this area from when you were growing up? Things that
I remember Westminster as the main street was on Friday and Saturday night. That's where all the shopping was. People would be on the street shopping, and then they close up about 12 o'clock. They roll up the sidewalks. But people would be sitting talking outside the cars and had the doors open summertime. But they'd go to the movies. We had 2 movie theaters, the State Theater and the Carroll on Main Street. They'd go to the Coney Island and get a hot dog for 30 cents or whatever. We had the hot dog places, 2 of them right there next door to each other. They got along fine. They had plenty of competition. They didn't have no problems. And the railroad was kind of the center downtown, where my father used to direct traffic down there a lot. It's because there's a lot of foot traffic. And on mostly Friday or Saturday night, he would direct traffic down there and help people get across. And all the farm families would come to town to do their shopping. That was Saturday night and Friday night. And that was kind of the center down at the railroad. There was a man down there who used to sell homemade candy. And Dad's police sign was there by the railroad where they parked their cars, and then they'd work on foot patrol. And just the Main Street was the thing. Where there's no mall, you could walk to all the stores. That's about the only thing else I can tell you, but the Main Street was the main hub.
And where in Westminster did you grow up?
I lived in Pennsylvania Avenue, 101 Pennsylvania. My father there, and his chief was up the street for him. There was 2 officers on Pennsylvania Avenue.
And what was your neighborhood like?
Oh, just all us kids playing. At nighttime, you'd play High Spy, have a telephone pole out front, you'd cover your head and run. And we had a street light there. That was on that big thing with playing High Spy in the evenings. And playing Cowboys and Indians, too. Up around the back, there was a powerhouse that made all the hot water and power for this heat for Western Maryland College. Had a big stack and a coal pile. We'd be running around playing on the coal pile like in the Western movies. That was the thing we did up in the back alleys playing cowboy. We reenact what we saw in the Saturday matinee theaters.
What sort of jobs have you had?
Oh, when I grew up, I carried papers when I started in 5th grade. Made $1.25 a week. I think when I left, when I was in 10th grade, I was up to $2.50. Then I was old enough to get a Social Security card. And then I started at G.C. Murphy Company. That was down by the railroad there, where I think the place is there. It's a restaurant there now. I can't think of the name of it offhand. Johansson's. That was G.C. Murphy's, 5 and Dime. I worked in the stock room there after school in the evening, worked Saturdays, Friday nights when the store was open. I think I ended up making $20 a week clear. But that was the first real job where you worked on Social Security and everything. And then after I graduated from high school, I went into the Army and served 3 years. Then I come home. found a job over at Black & Decker, and I worked there 35 years until I retired.
Great.
That's the sum total.
What did you do in the Army?
I was in a security outfit. We had the secret clearances, and we guarded a secret base. And that was the main thing that we had there. I was in Germany, and I was over there when the wall went up. It was very serious. We thought we was going to war then because we was on high alert.
It's interesting. Can you think of somebody who's been a big influence in your life, and what lessons did you learn from that person?
My father, I think, was the main. Yeah, Dad. Because he taught us boys to always tell the truth, and never tell lies, or don't tell somebody you're going to do something and then don't do it. Always a big influence. And I've always tried to train my two boys the same way.
That's great. That's wonderful, and that's something wonderful to share with your family. Can you think of some really happy moments that you had with your dad, or maybe with your family as a whole, some fun things that you would do together?
Christmas was a big time at my home, because Mom used to make a big dinner for all of us. When later on, the boys was married, they'd bring their wives and come. Big Christmas dinner, you'd eat 2 tables full. One table would eat, and they'd get up, and my mother made everything homemade. Bacon for Christmas and everything. That was a big thing. And me and Dad working together, like in the garden. His hobby was gardening, and I used to help him out around the garden. And on our wood pile for cutting wood, we used to use wood to heat with. And we worked together, and that's how I learned a lot of things from him about what going on around town. And learning about hard work and doing a good job. When you did something, do it right. Yeah, that, and we went on family picnics and things. Never went away on big vacations or nothing. That was something you wasn't doing in them days, vacations. But Mom was, my mother was a great cook and everything. She influenced me too, but Dad was a lot on the discipline stuff.
Where did you take family picnics to? Did you stay in the Carroll County area?
We went up in Frederick, up to Gamble State Park, Washington State Park, and one time when I was little, we went to the zoo down in Washington. That was a big thing. My brother-in-law was the driver. He used to always drive because we didn't have a car at home. So my sister was married, and her husband used to take us. He was the main chauffeur. That was a big thing when I was this little. When I went down to Washington Zoo.
And I'm sure it took a long time to get down there compared to today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How have you seen Carroll County change over, since you've been here, over your lifetime?
It's not as simple now, I'll put it that way. It was simpler times then. Now it's the traffic and the amount of people, moving in, coming up from the city, and it's just different. I don't enjoy it like I did as a child. It's sad, but I'm not going to let them run me out. But it's grown too much. The county, I'm worried about losing a lot of our farmland. Carroll County was a rural area. It's just the way it was. But now it's growing up. A lot more people, and people you don't know. When I was a kid, you could go around and leave your doors unlocked. Now, you can't do that. We did not have no drugs in Westminster. The only drugs you heard of as a kid was dope for painting your airplane dope and stuff. That's the only thing you knew about dope. That's the sad part, It's just not as quaint as it was. That's about it's just that the change is not good, I'll put it that way.
Has your family, the rest of your children, stayed in the area?
Yes. Well, the closest one lives in Westminster, the oldest son, and the other one, the furthest he lives, is in Pennsylvania, up at Littlestown. I have 2 sons.
So just a couple more questions to sort of finish up. Things I like to ask is, how would you like to be remembered, either by your family or by your friends?
I think to have good friends, to me, they're worth their weight in gold. Good friends you can call by, they'll help you out when you need help, or you help them out. I've always told some of my friends, I said, I'm like the old pioneers. I said, if your cabin's on fire and the Indians are attacking, and I hear it, I'll grab my rifle and be coming to helping you. That's the way I am. I believe, being a good neighbor, and treating people the way you want to be treated. I think that's the most important thing. I'd just like to be remembered that as a good, honest guy.
And is there anything else you'd like to share with me today?
I can't think of anything right offhand, Jamie, but it's just that it's grown too big around here. That's why I don't like to see I like Westminster the way it used to be. Saturday matinees at the State Theater, which the State Theater's gone. And the only thing we have left is where the Carroll is now the Arts Center. They show a film down there, but that was a theater up there, and the State was downtown there, close to John Street, which tore down now. And they was the ones that showed all the westerns on Saturdays. The serials, you had to go back and catch up to the serial. And it's just the things I remember. Carrying papers, and I used to walk my route. Now children don't even have a chance for a job like that. No jobs for kids to do after school, like bagging groceries. They don't do that no more. It's sad. It's hard for children to get jobs now while you're in school. One of the mayor's friends, Mr. Frank Thomas Bannon Hunter, he got a ticket because he was parked on a fire hydrant. He called Dad in, wanted him to take the ticket back. He wouldn't do it. So he said, okay, I'll quit then. I'll go home, take the uniform and bring it back. And the other officers all backed him up because my brother Earl come home from school, and I guess up at Easton. He said they were all sitting mad in the front room. Of course, the kid, what was wrong? And I don't know if they told him or not, but they all. So that night, the city didn't have no officers on duty. They all quit. Because next morning he apologized to my father and reinstated him. But he believed in, why should one man get away with not paying a ticket? That's the way you want to be, being honest, In other words, that wasn't graft.
You said your father became an officer in 1925 and chief in
1946 became chief until he retired in 1965. Mm-hmm. He always said he wanted to make 40 years, 1925 to 65. Yeah. The force was enlarging then later on after the war. That's when it started getting more men. He was veterans that come home, and I used to sit over at City Hall before I went to school. I'd sit there and talk to all of them, talk about the war stories, get souvenirs from them and stuff. I knew all of them in that picture in there. And it was good times. And the armory down there is where the recruiter was, where I joined. Now it's the city center where they do exercise and stuff. Community center. But yeah, that was one of the stories. But that night they didn't have no officers on duty because they all backed my father. And the mayor apologized to him and reinstated him. I guess they never had any more problems. They knew he wouldn't get away with anything like that. But to this day, anybody sees a picture in the paper, they'll say, "Well, your father, he was a good man." There might have been somebody that didn't like him somewhere, but as far as I know, everybody told me he was a good man. It's just the older people in Westminster would know it. Yeah, I always say I'm the baby. It was my father was a lot older, and the other kids were all older. My mom was about like 39, and Dad was about 9 years old. He about 48 when I come along, because he always used to refer to me as the baby. Yeah. Anything else I can help?
I've got lots of good stories. I could listen to you all day.
One man clipped him one time with a flashlight. He was drunk and disorderly down on Main Street. Yeah, and that was a big thing Friday and Saturday night. The crime wasn't. Most thing was drunk and disorderly. People, carrying on the street. And you didn't want drunks staggering around. People shopping. The payments was full of people. You walked on each other's heels because there was no mall. It was all the stores along Main Street. I think Dad put him in a sidecar on the motor. He went around to get on to crank it, and they carried a flashlight in a big one with about 10 cell battery, big flashlight, about a foot long. He took and cold cocked my father. So he was all bloody and everything. He took him to jail. And they all were kidding my father later about Dude Martin clipping him with a flashlight. Nobody knows when he didn't do nothing to him on the street. When they got him over in the jail, he was mouthing off and carrying on around. He said, I think one of the turnkeys or the deputies, somehow my brother found out, one of the older brothers, said, Dad just took him and went, poof, and he just slid right down the wall like a dead fly. And he didn't run his mouth anymore. So he got his justice. That was just the cheap shot. That's the only time I ever heard my father, anybody, trying to pick a fight with him. I think another one was in the city restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
There was a drunken, disorderly fellow in there, and Dad was out in the car, and one of the other officers went in and was pleading with him to come out. And there was a lady who worked in there, and in later years she married one of the other officers, but she was a waitress. She told me the story that Dad got tired of waiting. He come in, picked the guy with the scruff of the neck and the seat of the pants, and just slid him across the floor to the door, and then he went off to jail. That was another story that I heard.
He was quite a character, I'm sure.
Now it would be police brutality. They carried a little blackjack on them. People got them rolling. They disciplined them. People had respect for the law. I don't know any more stories like that. I knew Dad would make me pick up a drunk on Friday or Saturday night. People got paid then, and they'd be celebrating too much. Dad would take him home to his wife, But if he turned around and come back down to Friday, then he went over to the cooler, over to the old jail, which was a dank and dark place over there. I was in there one time, looked at it as a kid. Bugged him to take me over to see it. It was some place to see. Then's when the sheriff's wife used to cook for the prisoners too in those days, the county.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. They lived there. The sheriff was elected. Him and his wife lived in their quarters, and then she cooked their meals. Dad used to say they got a big meal in the evening, and lunch was like black coffee and molasses bread. Now it'd be cruel and unusual punishment. The stone building, they didn't have all this fancy one like they got now, where they can learn work computers and all that stuff, but they had the harsh times in that jail. And like I said, the sheriff's wife was just, the county supplied the food and everything, and they cooked and they lived there until they was voted out or whatever. Yeah, that's some stories. I can't. Of course, the railroad was a big thing down there. If you had pictures of it, showed the gates down there. Man would come out of the watch box and blow a whistle and lower the gates. Mm-hmm. Cars would stop. And then trains would come through like that. At nighttime would get dark, he'd blow the whistle and lower the gates and go out and hang a red lantern on it. Because I used to visit down at the station with my older brother, worked in the railroad. I was older, I'd walk down and shoot the breeze with him and watch the trains come there, and I used to talk to the watchman in the box. That was his job, sit in this little building and take care of the gates when a train comes. I used to think, man, that's the kind of job I'd like to have. Of course, the railroad did away with it. He was a veteran too. I used to sit there and talk to him. He'd have a little pot-belly stove in there. And he'd sit there with the door open, it'd be so hot in there. But he would go out and put the gates down, and then later on they got the automatic system and did away with the gates, so that cut a job. Yeah, I would say the railroad's kind of the hub of things in downtown. Friday, Saturday nights. People, that's how they all knew my father. All the farmers come to town. Everybody knew Charlie Seipp. They called him Charlie. Some would call him the chief, but he had a good reputation. He'd be here now. He wouldn't understand how the town's going. Because he was in the other century, in the 1893s when he was born. He used to tell me all kinds of stories. Me working together, working in the garden and on the wood pile and stuff. That's where I learned a lot of stuff. How it used to be. I know another story. He did a good deed for up at Grace Lutheran Church. He used to be our minister up there. He used to be my minister too, with Pastor Eckhart. He said he was a young college student. He was walking down. He said, my father stopped and said, hop in. And they took him up Western Maryland a class for him. Just little things he would do like that. He still remembers. He used to tell me, I said, your dad stopped and picked me up, slipped me up to the college in the sidecar. That was just one of the stories. Yeah.
Well, those are great stories. I appreciate you sharing those with us.
Glad to be able to do it.